Is this the end? Is this the end, my friends? We shall see. But yeah, sorry, it's another last minute affair. But I see these windows and I try to strike them while I've got them. So nailed the go button on this one. If you don't know, you better recognize we are reading Muster now in part 8. So 8 parts. Might be the last one. We'll see. Hey, Brian Smith. All right, we got Brian Smith's only here for half an hour, so we better rush through it. We are at the nihilistic void. Wargame D&D has a bold feature that is fairly rare in role-playing games. It involves real victory and defeat. It is real in the same way that sports contests are real. Success yields glory, and defeat causes shame and frustration. For the game to be powerful and meaningful, transformative, you have to get into this vibe, start caring about it like that. The game being exhilarating in success and disappointing in failure is, I think, at the heart of the greatest paradox and peril that the wargaming way faces. If winning really is fun, then why not just keep doing it? What manner of man is the referee who delights in defeat? I think D&D abandoned real challenge historically, largely because it takes effort and clarity to maintain the paradoxical ideal of the neutral referee position. A functionary of the game who, of course, would like to see the players succeed and prosper, but who nevertheless watches upon the proceedings like a hawk, ruthlessly striking down that which is weak, unfortunate, and untrue. I think the other thing, because I've been thinking about this a fair amount myself recently, this the concept of fun kind of in gaming, because you go down the road of, well, is it fun or is it not fun? And it can lead you to making choices that, on the one hand, will absolutely enhance fun. But then on the other hand, I think lose something. And then maybe that sporting aspect. Let me give an example. A lot of games, I think most recently MCDM, their game, their RPG. I've looked at the design devs have talked about doing something, and they're not the first game to do this. It won't be the last, right? Let's eliminate the hit dice, because you know what? Missing, that's not fun. Missing's not fun. So let's just you don't miss, or we're gonna clarify things to any extent. You make an attack, something's going to happen. You think, great. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with this. I think Into the Odd, and its children of games, its tree of games has that. But that thinking, to me, it can be problematic, because on the one hand, sure, of course, it is absolutely not fun to miss. Yes, right. Just like it's not fun to strike out in baseball. But part of the thrill of getting a hit in baseball is because there's that possibility that you're going to strike out and go to the back of the bench. And then you may not come to bat again, depending on how your team does, for an inning, 2 innings, whatever. That's part of the game. Basketball, shooting a ball in the hoop, it stinks when you miss. But would it mean as much if you hit, if you couldn't miss? So I wonder a lot of times these mechanics, I'm not trying to pick on that one specifically, it's just the one that came to my mind, is when if we take fun as just the factor, and that's all it is fun, then I think it reduces some of the things that have that depth, that sporting depth. And this came up in the yesterday stream, talking about the idea of a sporting, kind of looking at it like a sport, treating it like a sport. And you move further and further away from that sport concept when you're just boiling it down to every single moment of, is it fun? Yes or no? And maybe it's that I think we lose the larger context of, striking out is not fun if you're just looking at that moment. But then when you've struck out 2 times and now it's the bottom of the 8th and you come up to bat with 2 men on, and that represents the tying and the winning runs of the game, and then you get a double, there's that extra part because you struggled before. And you wouldn't have it, I think, if you didn't have it. You wouldn't have that moment, wouldn't be the same if you didn't have those other moments that were decidedly unfun, no question, unfun earlier on. There's probably not a right answer, but I definitely see where it's coming from, and it's been something that's been on my mind of late. Grace in defeat. As with anybody who actually plays D&D by its rules, I've been party to many defeats and failures over time. Some have been exciting races to the finishing line, faltering at the last moment. Others have been hilarious comedies of error, and some have been utterly unfeeling, meaningless stomps where promising characters, exciting adventure hooks, and unique campaign positions are annihilated for no good reason whatsoever. Annihilate them. The dice just go that way, and here we are, lost beyond human reason. A lot of effort and hopes went into the dungeon, and the only thing that came back was nothing. Nothing came back. My pet name for the inhuman nature of loss in D&D is the nihilistic void. It's a monster somewhat different in nature from what you encounter in most sports due to the way D&D is not played against human participants, and therefore there is nobody celebrating a victory when our side loses. There's just the void. It's even worse than most solo sports like track and field or golf or such, as the setups and preparations are so arduous, and every success of greater scope necessarily builds upon past successes. The best comparisons are hobbies like mountaineering or amateur rocketry, where failure to reach the peak implies wasting all the training and preparation that went into the expedition. You risk the nihilistic void by reaching for the glory of success. Let's see. Brian Smith says, often in sport, though, one side's failure provides equal satisfaction to their opponent. A GM taking joy in player failure feels much different. When this is what they're getting into right now, Brian Smith. You presage what he's saying, right? The nihilistic void. And I agree with you. There is that in a sport, that other side of it. But like he's mentioning here, I mean, not all sports have competitors, right? And whether it's, and I don't know, and maybe you guys have done this, maybe you haven't, just go to a gym or you're at a playground or something, you just start shooting a hoop and you're trying to can I get 5 in a row? Can I hit 3-pointers in a row? And you fail and succeed. If you were going to kind of close your eyes to pretend that you succeeded all the time, and then you finally do it for real, would it feel that great if you've been, I don't know, maybe it would, because you know that you didn't, I'm not sure. Yeah, of course, there is an element from team sports anyway that doesn't jibe with the comparison I was making, and like they're getting into here, because yes, there's no someone else on the other end. But I think even if you took those people out, I think just looking at it from the one side, you're playing against robots. You're playing against a computer, right? The joy of beating, say, Super Mario Brothers for the first time has to do with all those failures along the way. If you could never really fail, which is kind of like when you're playing on an easy mode, which that exists in video games, where something kind of stops you from bouncing off the track or falling in the pit and you just keep going. When you beat the game on that kind of super duper easy mode, it doesn't feel great. It just doesn't, right? Because you're like, yeah, I beat the game, I guess, but I don't even feel like I really beat it because I was just kind of bounced along the whole way. I don't know. Like I said, it's not a fully fleshed out thought. I certainly haven't put as much thought into it as the muster folks have put in here, but it's something I have a feeling. I've been known to characterize the game as a masochistic exercise in failure engaged by those who like salty licorice and just generally only feel alive under hardship. I absolutely do encourage people to get a taste, but if that first defeat is not for you, it just leaves you depressed, then maybe let's play something else. There are plenty of games out there that do not deal in the currency of the void. I think that's definitely fair. Some people just don't want to do that. And I think that obviously it's not even like play a different game. There's a version of D&D that's for you if you want to kind of at least push off that defeated feeling. But for those who can stand it, here's the positive facet, the glorious truth. Every time we lose, the encounter with the void affirms the authenticity of our play. The sacrament of the void, when we come upon it, is us touching the reality of the game. It really is a game of victory and loss, and we really can make wrong moves and actually lose in this exercise. It's not theater. The referee is not fudging for us, and this means that when we do win, the victory is real as well. Hey, Dave. Yes, and I would agree with that too, right? And I think that's kind of what I was saying, is when there are real stakes, when there are real moments of frustration, aggravation, whatever, then when you succeed, it's all the sweeter because you went through all those trials and tribulations. I think anyone who's played sports or worked on projects or really done anything of any note in life, it generally never goes, oh, first time in, first time doing it. Oh, it just kind of all worked together. Yeah, when it does, it's kind of like, oh, what? Right? We have those hardships. Now, maybe I know folks will say, but I'm not playing a game to have hardships. I mean, fair enough. Right? But I think that just like any of those hobbies, sports, whatever, I think part of that whole feeling of playing the sport or even just watching or following a sport is that having those ups and downs. And if there are no downs, I do think some air is taken out of the ups as well. I will not abandon you. The insightful RPG theorist McGee Baker once classified, or maybe it's pronounced some other way, apologies for any mangling, once classified the variety of gaming group social contracts into 2 classes. Nobody Gets Hurt is a game where the emotional stakes are low, technical guardrails are effective, and punches are pulled. If you do bruise another player's feelings, it's your fault, and you should say sorry and adjust to it. I Will Not Abandon You is a game that, in a certain sense, seeks the hurt. The players consensually commit emotionally and play hard, and it is possible that you will get upset. This is all right. We expected it. The group will not make it awkward or disassociate from your hurt. We'll work through it together. Dave says, I never trust anything that works the first time. I mean, yes, I guess that's. I would say I agree with that in terms of practices and whatnot, right? You want to kind of try it again, confirm it. I'll say this: if I plug in I plug into appliance, I want it to work, and maybe that's an interesting comparison, right? Is that game as appliance? You plug in your refrigerator, you expect it to work. You just want it to do the thing it's supposed to do, and you don't want the trials and tribulations and that kind of thing. You just want it to work, and maybe that's what we're at with gaming. That there are folks who want game as appliance. Plug it in, get heroic stuff on the other side. Not interested in fiddling with the dials, not interested in having to hard work, not interested in having it fail at the worst time. We just want that experience kind of out of the box, push the button and open the box and there it is. As opposed to this other kind, which is more like the DIY or some other kind of, we're going to do it ourselves. It's going to be crafty, but it's going to be it's going to be untrustworthy all the way through. And gosh, if we can actually get this thing to all sit together and not fall apart as soon as we lay our glorious creation on a tabletop, then what an achievement that would be. In some places, Meg's analysis has since been taken to mean that there is a good kind of game and a bad kind of game, but that is, of course, not the gist of it. I would say that because the game I've been trying to describe here is of the latter kind, wargaming way, when engaged, it's a powerful activity with potential for personal growth, may well cause you to get upset. Is arguably one of the core elements of why we humans contest in sports, to train and grow to withstand failure. Pick ourselves up, and we can't have that if nobody gets hurt. This is not to say that you can't play nobody gets hurt in the wargaming way. Of course you can. Just make sure to construe the game's subject matter and processes in a way that emotionally alienates the players from the game events, victories and defeats both. Keep it casual. Maybe get rid of character death. That is a very high-profile particular detail that often features as a sticking point in this regard. Or just keep character relationships jokey and don't mind too much about what happens to them. But that's basically a choice between being casual and being serious. If you want to get the most out of this game, or any game, you will go further at some point. And if you do, I think that Meg is absolutely right about the correct kind of social contract to be doing it with. The players need to support each other and be there for each other if somebody does get hurt. And I feel like I'm going to keep doing sports analogies, but I think this is similar in a way to if you ever wanted to join a pickup league of some kind of sport, basketball, softball, kickball, volleyball, whatever, you'll generally find different levels from the lowest kind of super casual level to the super serious level. Now, generally, the best players who are playing are at that super serious level, but I mean that in the way they're talking about here, both in terms of it's serious because they're really good at it, and if you make mistakes, they're gonna throttle you, and that's just part of it. But also because they take the game super seriously. At the bottom, you have folks that are just kind of looking to run off a couple of calories, or they're just very new, whatever, and they don't care. And when you're looking for either you're applying to a league or joining a team or doing whatever, right, you want to find where you are on that ladder of these super serious, really good folks at the top, or the totally just casual at the bottom. And there's no right answer, but you have to kind of know yourself. There's also an element of skill in those things involved, but I would argue there's kind of that same element here. But you can also find that, hey, I'm not knowledgeable in the game, but I want to do it seriously versus we just want to do whatever. And I know that when I used to play more volleyball, I love volleyball, playing it anyway. I don't really watch it. And I used to get so annoyed when I was kind of playing it, when I would go to join a volleyball game and people weren't really taking it seriously. They're just, the ball comes over and then the first guy, the ball is just like, and just throws it back. And it would just frustrate me. I wasn't playing with the right people, and it's not their fault. It's probably more my fault because I hadn't thought of that consideration of how do I feel about the game? Where's my skill level? Where's my mind level? Where's my thought level on this game? And I need to find the people who are like that and play with them and not just play with other folks. I know they're going to it's going to bother me. I'm not going to have fun. And here's a sip of, what is this? Kind of a somewhat cold cappuccino for the working man. Brian Smith says they found out where they stacked up in that hierarchy when they thought they were pretty good at ping pong and then being humbled by the seniors in the church gym. Yeah, you never know. You never know where the ringers are going to be found. Okay, what this not abandoning looks like varies widely between cultures. So I won't tell you to go and hug that player who lost a loved character. Your group might or might not be like that. Mine generally aren't. Finns aren't very touchy feely. Here it's more like you let the player stew for the rest of the session without drawing attention to their being upset, and then see afterwards if they want to talk about it. Very situational, all of this. That's the I'm not a Finn, but I feel like that fits in pretty much with my approach. Unless it were my daughter, in which case I would want to be more comforting. I can, however, tell you that emotional abandonment often, or I can tell you what emotional abandonment often looks like. When you're uncomfortable with another player's pain, you belittle it in an effort to force the game back to being casual. Perhaps you think this is a quote unquote nobody gets hurt game, plus you're a bit of an ass and think that it's the upset player's fault that they're upset. So now it's on you to apply a bit of metaphorical stick to make them realize where they are and stop crying like a little girl. So you joke about their loss, maybe say something like, it's not such a big deal, man up, or whatever. Belittle their pain. That sure works in the sense that this player will never, ever commit emotionally to the game again. They'll learn to play casually because they know that when playing with you, the reward for being serious and maybe getting a bit upset by a loss is humiliation. And I've seen this both kind of directly and indirectly, and it sucks. I probably have done it too. I don't recall doing it. There may be someone out there to be like, you did that to me, and I wouldn't doubt it. And I apologize. I was different back then, or maybe not. I don't know. I think it's also very group dependent. It's kind of that group ethos. And I definitely played when I played in that long-term PvP sci-fi game. I think there was everyone part of that group's kind of thing was there's a little bit of I won't even say a little bit. There's a lot of Schadenfreude going around. When someone else encountered some hardship, there was a lot of kind of glee being taken on the sidelines. And I was someone, I probably still am, who would kind of look at the landscape of the group I'm in and kind of tried to fit in with what they were doing. So, you see that happening, you kind of take it up. Maybe I shouldn't have. I mean, to be honest though, there wasn't a lot. Most of the stuff that was really bad in that group, where things really got kind of heated and personal and emotional, happened before I got there. So I don't feel too terrible. Mostly because I don't think I did much or was party too much. Hey, Mikey, how are you? All this can apply to other things than just losing player characters in D&D, by the way. If you think about situations where players get upset and lose their composure, those are the situations under deliberation here. But of course, if there's one regular aspect of the game that can sneak up on you and frustrate the most jaded souls, it's the nihilistic void of loss. Ryan Smith says, this is super common in sports from what I've seen too. Weird overlap between nerds and jocks here. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think there's a lot more in common with kind of sports and this stuff that maybe we should feel more akin to each other. I think probably, sports folks would say like, oh, like it's nothing. You're just talking in your brains. And of course, maybe our folks would say like, hey man, this is all in your brains, mind power over, muscly bleh kind of thing. But yeah, there's a lot of common ground potentially there. Absolutely. And yeah, it does happen. And trying to teach, and maybe that's a good way to look at it. If maybe you're thinking like, what is the big deal? Because we're talking about, say, role-playing game stuff. But in sports, you obviously have to deal with people who take things super seriously and get upset. And how would you deal with them? How would you feel? If it was your daughter or it was your brother or somebody like, your partner, how would you feel if they got really hurt for something that happened in a sport, right? And try to extend that to your fellow person, fellow gamer. The mid-tier crisis point. The nihilistic void has a huge effect on the nature of the game. Once you face it and see it, the entire game cannot help but start orienting towards it. This is the nature of the game, so nothing to worry about in particular. You learn to appreciate the authenticity of being metaphorically kicked in the groin, or you find some nicer game to play instead. However, I would also posit that there exists an inherent creative paradox in the nature of wargaming D&D, an insidious emergent interaction that may well explain much about how the game has changed historically. I like to call this emergent feature the mid-tier crisis point for reasons that'll become evident. The issue is that the emotional stakes present in the game are not constant. The further you progress an adventurer, the more effort the player has invested in them. For this reason, we cannot just claim that you'll get inured to the nihilistic void. Maybe you're fine with losing a character you just created. Maybe you're fine with losing a character who stumbled into some minor success. We can never say that you're inured to the void in its entirety because the game doesn't seem to have any practical cap for how far you can fall. The higher you climb, the more you commit emotionally, and the greater the fall. Meanwhile, the one constant of the game is its loss condition, losing your character. That's the baseline against which success is measured. Thus, the creative paradox. To succeed further in D&D, you must be willing to play for ever higher stakes with relatively less success to be had against the ever-increasing risk of loss. It depends on particulars, but I think that at some point in the campaign, there comes a time when the paradoxical demand of ever more risk for ever less success becomes unacceptable. I think I generally see it looming somewhere in the mid-levels between 10K and 100K XP totals. You've put so much work into the character that risking their life for marginal future gains starts seeming insane to an outside observer, not in the throes of the gambling. I think that the existence of this emergent feature of the game explains a fair bit about why the game texts are the way they are. They're trying to dodge the nihilistic void and afford you the space to keep playing. Whether this is what one should do is, of course, a highly philosophical question. Goes into the nature of the game. Here are the various ideas I've seen for how to resolve the mid-tier crisis point. Before I get into that, Dave says, I really only play with friends, so I care when they feel crushed. Yes, it helps, right? And I think that's the interesting thing about the internet age, or maybe we can even call it the post-COVID. Well, I guess it started pre-COVID, but just the streaming, the online play age, is that you don't tend to know the folks you're with very well. And so it's easier to both not be comforting. It's harder to try. If you were going to try to be, it's harder to. We're all more just made more distant by the fact that no one is physically there. We can't see all the cues. Can't necessarily, even depending on how your setup is, we might not even see the person's face. There's just a lot that is, and that's, it's just unfortunate because it leads, I think, to a lot of misconceptions, misconstructions, I want to say misconstruals. I don't know if that's a word, of situations because the limitations of being on screens, looking at each other or not. Brian Smith says, retire those bad boys at level 9. That is a good point. But first up here on the how to resolve the mid-tier crisis point. The game has a level limit. It could be the case that all characters who achieve level 4 or 6 or whatever are retired. The campaign is about low-level adventuring, or there could be a soft limit with players encouraged to let their best characters out to pasture while continuing to play others. The crisis point is averted by never progressing to press your nose against it. Stop playing. After playing for a year or two, we've managed to get some characters up to mid-levels. However, one wrong move and now the party died. Isn't that a natural place to end the campaign? I don't know if this is a solution as such, but it is an end. Success inflation. Making success easy naturally moves the very concept of the mid-tier of play numerically further away. You can play a 6th level character and feel like they're 3rd level by the old reckoning. If it's easy to get to the 6th level, then perhaps we can withstand losing the occasional 6th level character now and again. You can always make more. Of course, this is all hardly a solution, merely rearranging the deck chairs on a sinking ship. Or we could become theatrical. The historical main line of D&D development solved the crisis point by shifting from real challenge to pretend challenge. Adding enough and counterbalancing resurrection rules, and dice fudging will absolutely achieve a game of D&D where it is safe enough to play without having to worry over much about losing more characters than the group can emotionally afford. Lastly, a new mode of play. Name-level domain play never became a fully established thing for D&D, but it did suggest a wargaming solution to the crisis point. If the game were to change at higher levels, switching topics is something where character death is not the very definition of losing, then we can still have a war game even with characters too valuable to risk routinely, right? I speak of the crisis point as somebody who sees it from below, but does not truly know what lies beyond. Perhaps somebody else has played hard, legitimately challengeful D&D to the heights where losing your character becomes unacceptable and can tell us whether there is a game out there. I hope to explore the possibilities myself as soon as we manage to advance our campaign to the crisis point. RPG Grandma, hey RPG Grandma, says they're starting a wall for their fallen dead in their game, post-death certificates. Nice. I've seen that at cons and things. It'd be cool to see one in a permanent location. I feel like someone who's got a fancy kind of permanent gaming cave, den, room, whatever. It would be interesting to see if there could be a tasteful way to do a wall of remembrance. Remember all those fallen heroes. And maybe even some of the villains, too. It might be fun to put up if somebody famous or, a big bad guy gets gacked. Who were the ones that gacked him, sort of thing. Hey, look at that. And we have made it to the end of the main text of Muster. I thought I had, so hold on. Wait, do I hear? And wait, can I get one of these? And how about one of these? And then another one of those. Did any of those sounds go through? I don't know if I have it set up right for the sounds to come through, but I tried to play some soundboards. Okay, she's going to get a corkboard. Brian Smith says the sports analogy might break down there, getting to a point so serious where losing is unacceptable. I don't think it breaks down actually, Brian Smith. But what tends to happen in a sport is you have a season. So even if you're going undefeated, you get to that season, playoffs, whatever, and then it ends. So I would say that sports maybe stop short, but even then, I might argue that sports also reach that point. And the reason is because or approach that point because if you've ever been on a winning streak or done something and you can see how you start to get nervous, or you can read accounts of folks who've played on teams that were striving or just striving for records or trying to get personal records or team records or anything like that. There's that added stress. Added stress. Oh, you know what? I don't think I tried to do all those sounds. I don't think they went through, did they? Didn't go through. Hold on a minute. I tried to do some clapping and stuff and they didn't. Let's try it now. Here we go. There we go. And then, so I think there's I think the sports analogy can still hold. I'm sticking with that sports analogy. I think it's still got some good points to it. But it's going to have limits. It's not going to be perfect. All right, I'm glad I was able to put in my claps. All right, let's see what the appendices have. We got it only took half the stream to get here. Oh, I mean, okay, let me not say that. It only took 8.5 streams to get here. Appendices. That was the main treatise. I hope I got all the ideas moving for you. Some supplementary materials and back-end stuff from this point on. Yay! Oh, more war stories. I'm down for war stories. Okay, during the writing of the book, I came to conclude that practical examples of gameplay, quote-unquote war stories, may have some merit as inspiration, entertainment, and education. It might be easier to understand how we play through a few concrete stories about it. I didn't want to choke the book up with excessive storytelling. So many fun stories had to be left out. I'll skim off the best of the bunch here. Read on if you want to learn about more of the high points of our historical fantasy DMing. All right, I definitely do. I don't know how long these will be, so let's just read the first one and then we'll see. We'll see where we get to. Okay, the mantlet story. A practical illustration of what authenticity is. I think it was the summer of 2011 when we started our long-running historical fantasy campaign. It was what I consider my first fully realized, entirely successful D&D campaign in the wargaming way. I was refereeing myself. Some half a dozen sessions into the campaign, we were engaging with the Tomb of the Iron God, an adventure module widely considered a modern classic of the form. The adventure is a low-level dungeon with a more structured upper level and a labyrinthine crypt level underneath. Archetypal D&D undead content abounds in the crypts for many of us. It was a school of hard knocks in managing skeletons, zombies, and ghouls, worst of all. The adventurers had explored and dealt with most of the first level, and were slowly getting to grips with the crypt when something happened that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Sippy, one of the core players, had an idea. The party, having retired from the dungeon, returned to the nearby town to bolster their manpower with new hirelings. They had some funding on hand from prior excursions. In addition to allies, the party hired a couple of experienced woodworkers and purchased supplies for building mantlets. Mantlets, or pavises, or similar conceit, are basically a range of different big shields, sometimes used in medieval archery and siege doctrines. They differ from shields by being so large that they're not held in hands. Depending on the design, the mantlet could have wheels, stable feet, or even a spike to be pushed into the ground to hold the device in place. Needless to say, a mantlet has the potential to be far larger and more robust than a shield intended to be held offhand during battle. I knew basically nothing about mantlets when CP suggested building some, but CP could describe his design to us, so we figured out the parameters of having the adventurers build some. Entirely doable for a low-level adventuring party after they find a few hundred rupees in the dungeon. Rupees? What are we playing in Zelda? The party proceeded to figure out how to use the mantlets. They were fairly slow to move around, but if fighting could be had in tactical defensive, that wouldn't matter. Aren't rupees also is that India, the currency is the rupee? I don't know why I went to Zelda, but anyhow. And when they were fielded against the undead in those crypts, the mantlets were absolutely overwhelming. Skeletons are too weak or stupid to pull the mantlets down against a party crushed behind them in a dungeon corridor, leaving the skellies to reach futilely over and around the barricade, while the adventurers could dispatch the mindless enemy with long spears wielded over the mantlets. zombies were stronger, but practically speaking, too stupid and slow to be able to pull down or break the mantlets in combat space. This was the beginning of our local school of tactical defensive dungeon combat. It's not some one-liner solution to everything in low-level D&D, but if you can afford to set it up, it solves a lot. And what's most exciting is that let me try it again. And what's most exciting is that it is an authentic outcome of the process of play. The rulebook doesn't suggest it. The adventure module does not suggest it. The referee does not suggest it. CP and friends thought this up on their own. We played the game to verify whether it would work, and it did. That's the underlying prize of wargaming: authentic success and authentic learning. Hey, Ian. Yes, this book is a lot longer than I thought it was. Absolutely. There's a lot going on. We're out of the main content. We're in the appendices. So the mantlet story is really fun, but I think it's and I think it's a good tale, because I think oftentimes the GM will try to figure out how to get around the mantlets, right? Or to ask the question, why won't these work? I've seen this kind of thing come up on Reddit and other places. My party have assembled mantlets, and they're taking care of everything. Like, what do I do? Kind of thing. And I think the answer here is, you don't. I mean, eventually you're going to run into ghouls who just have to kind of touch you. I always think of ghouls as being somewhat smart, and they're certainly stronger. So the mantlets maybe provide more of a temporary advantage, maybe the first round or so, and then the ghouls are going to pull them forward or do whatever to them, get around them, clamber over them, whatever, in ways that zombies and skeletons can't do. So there's a natural limit to, mantlets. And of course, if you were looking at, well, what if they were fighting kobolds or goblins or orcs, something like that? Well, the mantlets, again, would be successful at first, probably for a round or two, but then things like, hey, let's go get torches, or hey, let's just close the door that they're in, or hey, let's do something else, right? There are ways around it. We don't have to. We can, as they're saying here, kind of be authentic, that's a great plan, and it is going to work gangbusters against non-intelligent opponents of a certain type. Mantlets wouldn't work that great against a lot of animals, because the animals would just jump over the mantlet or do whatever, or just bowl into it, knock it over. But these kinds of critters, it would work exceptionally well, and the party figured it out. So you know what you do? Yeah, great, mantlets. And if they want to use mantlets every time they encounter skeletons and zombies, presuming they can do it in the confined spaces like in corridors and things like that, then you should just say, great, you've got the materials. If you're always bringing along a couple of hirelings and a wagon full of mantlet bits, and you construct them and deconstruct them, and you spend time coming up with a portable mantlet system, then yes, you've got a new workable thing. And maybe at some point it'll get proved not great. I mean, one of the funny things is, I'm sure if you're running mantlets, if there's any trap in the hall, like any kind of pit trap, you're falling in it. I mean, the mantlets are going across the hallway. I presume you're dragging or rolling them across. There's no way whatever tripwire is, you're not going to hit it. You can't see well over it, so you can't really be checking in front. So guess what? If there's a single pit trap, folks with a mantlet like that, they're all going down in the pit trap. So it's not like it doesn't have its own risks. And of course, if somebody manages to get behind you, the mantlets end up cutting off potentially your retreat until you bowl them over, knock them out of the way, or do whatever. So it's not without risk. It's not without consequence. But great idea. Let it play and see how it goes. Be authentic on the other side. When you get to enemies who are smart, they shouldn't just go running into the mantlets like they're zombies or skeletons. They should be thinking about, well, this isn't going to work. I got to do something else. What can I do? What do I have around me to, change the equation here? Because I can't. They're going to pound me, but by the time I get to those mantlets and try to get over it, so I got to figure something else out. And to me, that's the game. That's that fun of the referee. Hey, the party has punched. Can the denizens of this dungeon counterpunch? And if they can't, hey, give them the TKO, knockout. They got it, right? But there probably will be things that will come up. And you don't really, and I'm saying is, you don't have to break out of that mold. You don't have to pull back and say, outside the game, how can I defeat this tactic because it's too good? Think about what they can do in the world. And like I said, I think that's fun of the game. Hey, Magnus, RBG Grandma says they found a free PDF for fantasy type PC or NPC death certificates. Oh, nice. I don't doubt that's a thing. I know that somebody, it might have been Daniel, might have been somebody else, had a stamp where you could stamp the character sheet with, killed by whatever, and I think it had a blank. Like you'd stamp it, and it would have the text on there, and then you could write in the blank kind of what killed the player character. I'm sure on Etsy or other kind of similar type sites, there's got to be just tons of different products for that. Oh, Ian says they have a deceased mail stamp. Yeah, those are good. Okay, here's another story. The teleporter disaster. I have had many experiences with the nihilistic void of defeat in D&D, but this one might just take the cake. I'd like to share it to illustrate what clean play unencumbered by dramatic control structures can sometimes look like. This was in 2014 when I joined Heike's Moldovan campaign, and again, apologies for any name butchery, which had been going on for a while at that point. The infamous event occurred in the first session I was there, so I lacked much perspective on what in the name of Raggy was going on. The party had been delving into the classic Rahasya adventure module, filtered ruthlessly through wargaming way practices and the particular setting aesthetic of historical fantasy that had been all the rage in our circles for a while. But basically, a wacky dungeon adventure with wacky dungeon furniture, including teleportation devices scattered around like discarded boots. The party had earlier found a teleporter that very conveniently traveled in and out of the dungeon itself. This was useful for us now, as the local baron had closed off the main entrance to the place. Us clever devils were going to use the teleporter connecting to a nearby roadside shrine to sneak in nevertheless. The dungeon denizens had tried to destroy the teleporter to plug the hole in their defenses since the last time the party was there, which the party magic user noticed, so we knew that everything wasn't quite right with it, but it had seemed to be working before, so hey ho, let's go. Heike, as the referee, was, of course, very considerate about that teleporter malfunction and had prepared an actual teleporter disasters random table just in case it would come in handy. An old and glory tradition of the game, those hyper-specialized random tables. Helps the referee maintain decision-making hygiene, particularly when stakes can get extremely high. And if we recall, that hygiene is sort of that concept of how you're kind of going through and making your decisions to play. So by coming up with a random table of disasters, then you know that it's kind of out of your hands. You could roll it out in the open. You could put the disaster table out in the open. It's all kind of there, as opposed to, and it's sort of within the game, right? You're not considering in terms of what I want to happen. I'm making a table. Everything on there is going to maybe stink in a different way. Maybe stink for me as the GM, maybe stink for the players, but it's kind of all out there. That's the hygiene aspect. RPG Grandma says that YouTube keeps telling her to watch her own videos for you. It is funny, RPG Grandma, because I will get my own videos suggested to me at times too. I don't know. It is what it is. I don't know. I don't know why YouTube does it, because clearly they must. I mean, they know. But hey, it's good to know that I'm making videos that if nobody else will enjoy them, I will enjoy them. Okay. Heike tells me that the teleporter had a 1 in 6 chance of malfunctioning per use, and like 5% chance in the mishaps table of getting a your dead corpse gets splattered all around the destination result, instead of something less stark. My disposable new character went in first, actually got a malfunction threatening to merge him with his equipment, but saved successfully and arrived safely at the destination. Kinda an ominous start. Unfortunately, Piazza impetuously jumped in next with Tenelli's character in tow, and of course, that's when the teleporter spat out a lethal malfunction for them, delivering mangled corpses of a wizard and a fighter, respectively. That insult to injury, the rest of the party crossed over safely. We gathered ourselves, now in the dungeon cellars, and kept going, finding some imprisoned adventures for the players to take up as their new characters. No biggie. Afterwards, it took me some time to actually catch up to the scope of these events that I was witnessing as a recent newcomer to the group. We just lost 2 third-level characters to that damn teleporter. Mid-tier characters are crazy rare in this playstyle. That whimsical teleporter just all but decapitated a party that had been adventuring for quite a while, developing their positions. I'm still puzzled and amazed by the laconic, polite manner the events unfolded at the table. I literally didn't understand the consequential weight of what was going on as these characters kept exploding. The table decorum was that serene. I have no idea of the mental mixture of ironic distance, iron sportsmanship, and shock involved. Players can get quite distraught at the death of Blackleaf, after all, but not that night. We just kept going. New characters for the gentleman. We have a dungeon to delve. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen that myself. Well, I haven't seen a teleporter just, do that, but I haven't seen a bunch. I don't know if in a fantasy game I've actually ever come across a teleporter. I've never run a teleporter, because it's just not my jam, not my bag as far as things I want to deploy as a GM. unless we were running some kind of sci-fi barrier peaks kind of thing. And then in terms of playing, I don't think maybe I've been in dungeons where they've existed. We never found them. I don't know. But as RPG Grandma says, stay mission focused, players. Exactly. I mean, good on them. I probably would have been annoyed if I lost my third level character to a mishap like that, but they knew going in, right? They knew. And I think that's, to me, the key part of the story is when he illustrates how the GM told them, hey, you got a 1 in 6 chance of a malfunction per use. And basically, there's a 5% chance of a lethal outcome if you get that. So you can look at it and say, 1 in 6 chance is 16.666, whatever percent. And you multiply that by 5%, you get a really low number. I don't know what the math is on that number. I suppose I could do it. Let's do a quick math on that. So we got 1 divided by 6 is 16.666666, right? Right. And then we're going to multiply that by 0.05. So the chance that something, so between both of those things, if I did my math correctly on the calculator here, it's less than 1%. You're at 0.833333%. 0.83% chance of getting a lethal result. Normally, I'm on internet circumstance, you take those odds. Those are, if your doctor said over your lifetime you have a 0.83% chance of some illness happening, you would probably say, all things considered, I'll take it. That is a good number, right? But then it happens twice. I mean, the first part happened 3 times, fatalities happened twice. But at least you know, and maybe those odds you look at and the player, and that's why you just jump in. All right, cool, let's go. But then it happens. But they were informed, and I think that's a big part of it. I think if I know the odds, I do it anyway, and I watch the GM roll. Maybe I even see it, or I roll it, because I can see in a lot of games. If I was the GM and I say, hey, you got a 1% chance, 1 in 6% chance, or sorry, 1 in 6 chance of a malfunction, I'll let the player roll the die. So they're going to get to roll that die. And of course, I'm going to let them roll the die on the random table too. Let's roll the die on the table, then you can get upset, but I think some of the annoyance might not be there because you know what you were in for. But oftentimes we don't always get that. I guess is what I'm saying. I guess what I'm saying ultimately is I like the part in that story that I like the most is the illustration of the transparency in the game. Short story made very long. All right, here's another one, I think, called Finally Mid-Tier. In our original historical campaign back in 2011, this was when I realized that we had arrived. This was no longer a low-tier game of hilariously cancerous death and misery. These adventurers were heroes, and this is what it looks like. The party was delving into Skull Mountain, a decidedly showy mid-tier dungeon with intense peril. The adventurers had gathered a few score hirelings into a real adventuring company, but the heavy resistance of the dungeon at every turn demanded taking great care about exposing the mundane hirelings to danger. Better to have the heroic player characters at spear point for the most part. The dungeon features a massive stalactite growing out of the ceiling of a vast subterranean cave. Spiraling down the rock formation are narrow stairs, the only route down into the domain of the lizardmen. Unknown to the adventurers, the lizardmen, bless their little claws, have a catapult set up on the adjoining cliff inside the cavern, pointed at the stalactite. There are even torches set up upon the stairs at regular intervals to enable spotting intruders coming down, and retreating allies had warned the lizardmen to be ready here. The adventurers were making haste going down those treacherous stairs, but you can only move so fast single file in an unfamiliar stairway without guardrails. When the lizardmen started shooting their catapult, the launch noises were largely swallowed by the immense vastness of the cavern. So unfair. For the adventurers, there was no warning at all when the large boulders suddenly appeared noiselessly from the darkness and smashed at the stalactite staircase in the middle of the rear guard. The boulder broke off a section of the stair and sent men hurling down to their deaths. Or so you'd think. The dice indicated that the boulder fell on Hans Kruger, last in the rear guard, 4th level now. Hans was ready, though. The way the rules work, the catapult shot deals 3d6 damage, which the heroic adventurer could soak to their hit points. Apparently, Hans realized the movement at the last moment and jumped aside, narrowly avoiding instant death and taking a mere glancing blow. The stalactite shook from the hit as the stairway crumbled, with men falling off to their deaths, 150 feet to the bottom, but who's counting? Dexterity checks indicated that a first-level adventurer, Vengeance the 11th, Oh, I love those. I love those. Was among the unlucky ones, as were two hirelings. Hans, though, rolled a double critical on the dex check here, definitely catching him, realizing the situation, jumping for the next man in line, grabbing for the falling armsman, and securing both himself and the hireling away from the danger zone. Looking at the missing 20 feet or so of stairs, with Hans and the lone hireling on the upper side, the party decided to begin the arduous yet hasty process of retreating over the gap. The alternative seemed grim, particularly as the adventurers couldn't know that the lizardmen had only one of these large boulders for their catapult. Just a tidbit of play, but for me, that game mechanical interaction between Hans's burgeoning hit point pool and the man-crushing mechanical weight of the boulder was significant. This was exactly what would happen in a movie, the support cast plunging to their dooms while the adventuring hero somehow survives a terrible peril. So good job, D&D. Modeling seems to be on point here. Yep, Vengeance the 11th is great. The one thing with this is what I find interesting. This is where I'm not quibbling with what happened here. I would either quibble with the short-sightedness of the lizardmen, or I'd quibble with what they're doing. So I'm going to make a couple assumptions here, and this is just on my own. This is my own little side foray here. Assuming that the lone, and this may be a horrible assumption, that the way in and out of this subterranean area is that stalactite, and you use a catapult with a boulder that's strong enough to destroy the only way in and out, or at least make a big gap in it, seems like a silly thing to do. I feel like you could just, arrows, smaller shot, something else. Like I could see, Greek fire would be a great choice, right? Just get some hollow, get some, I don't say hollow, get some, say, earthenware jugs, right? Fill them with some oil, get those things lit, send them flying. But you don't want to destroy their own way in and out. I don't know if this is something that the dungeon did. I don't know if it's just playing off the fact that it's boulder, but it seems like a real short way, like, haha, we've stopped them from going. But now it's going to be heck for us to get out of here. Maybe the lizardmen can just climb up the side of the walls or climb up the side of the stalactite. Maybe they're like geckos that way. I don't know. It seems, what was it? Spiting your nose, cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of deal. But it is a great visual for sure. All right, so here we go. Let's see, what do we got? We got time for another one, I think. The Many Caldwells. A fun little story about campaign prep. B9 Castle Caldwell and Beyond is an obscure TSR adventure module. I don't think it's all that obscure, but all right. Or rather, a module it is claimed to be. In fact, it's an anthology of 5 small scenarios of no particular significance. My understanding is that Caldwell is not of much interest internationally. But here, in Finland, it enjoys something of a cachet for being one of the few modules ever officially translated and sold in the Finnish market. RPG Grandma says, Lizardmen got a construction crew, obviously. Yes. As obvious as the fact that Vengeance the 12th will soon be back for revenge, the Lizardmen will repair. Many of our D&D kids, in which number I never belonged myself, played this back in the 90s. So Caldwell, the titular adventure, first in the anthology, is well known in the Finnish scene as the iconic basic D&D dungeon. In 2014, the local hobbyists had a little dungeon design contest with a related premise. The castle keep of Caldwell, populated by bums and rats in the main, it's not a showy adventure. Enjoys a distinctive shape as a small, compact adventure location. If you remove the internals and just leave the walls, it's ready to be repurposed into a new dungeon. Your senile veteran players recognize the distinctive keep from the outside, but hey, the internals are new now, or are now new. And there's a little picture here of an empty Caldwell map grid. That's cool. Oh, and it's conveniently, I guess they have it. I have Castle Caldwell too, but I don't remember really looking at the map that much. I didn't have the time to participate in the contest myself, but I thought that the results were great. So afterwards, I took these new Caldwells alongside the original and threw them all into our then ongoing campaign. We were playing a later leg of the historical fantasy campaign, now set in 13th century Sweden. So the premise was that a famous castle engineer, an English Freemason by the name of Caldwell, obviously, had a few generations back designed a new keep for the taming and colonization of Westmanland, with the result that over a half dozen manor keeps around the region had been constructed from the same plans. The king and the engineer were cursed by a witch, of course, which is why all except, I think, one of the keeps had since fallen afoul of various misfortunes and become adventure locations. The contest Caldwells have all kinds of fun contexts, like being sunk into a swamp or becoming haunted or falling sideways into a rift in the earth. So clearly there's something cursed about being a Caldwell keep. What tied the chain Caldwell adventure together was when the party discovered the unfortunate architect's old map designating the building sites of the keeps, handy for a party of adventurers interested in finding cursed read dungeon sites. With map in hand, nothing prevented the adventurers from researching the particular cursed histories of each location and associate noble families at their convenience. Excuse me. This Caldwell scheme worked really well as an extended sandbox campaign adventure. I thought notably, the conceit does not suffer from an excess of plot, like large adventure modules often do. I also like it as an example of how you can use simple structural patterns with found content to make a dense setting to adventure in. That's a cool idea. I didn't know that. I just like the idea that this particular adventure module became well known in one part of the world when it's, like I said, I don't think it's really obscure, but yeah, it's not. I wouldn't say it's well remembered either. Okay, so we got a short history of D&D. I'm going to kind of skim some more of these appendices, unless there's something amazing. So we have another one of these charts. Summary, there's 3 schools, historiography of D&D. So we have old school, starting with chainmail into D&D, all the way up to basic, that's being Holmes basic, and then advanced D&D, and then basic expert, and then Beck Me down here, and then finally the rules cyclopedia here. And then we have calling it middle school. They have starting at Dragonlance, probably a good starting point. I think I think what's the first Strahd one? Ravenloft is probably, because Ravenloft has a lot of the features that I feel like you see later in Dragonlance. So I may start Ravenloft, wherever that is over here. Dragonlance, 2nd edition, player options, and then new school starting with D&D 3rd edition, 4th, Pathfinder, and 5e. And then we have some more history stuff. And we have a glossary, which is nice. And then we got more glossary stuff, more glossary stuff, more glossary stuff. Oops. Hitting the wrong buttons. Play it all, says RPG Grandma. I can say I haven't played Pathfinder. If I go back here, well, I gotta go way back here. Yeah, I think I've pretty much, maybe Beck Me, I would say. Maybe I haven't played, might be the one that have I played it a little bit? Oh, we do have these other OSR stuff down here. Hackmaster, Castle Crusade, Osric, Labyrinth Lord, Source of Wizardry, Lamentations, and of course a whole bunch of other ones down there. So you have the main D&D ones. I mean, I've now been able to play a combination of Chainmail and D&D. I don't think I've played Holmes, just Holmes. Played AD&D. Played BX. I've run BX. I don't know if I've actually played Back Me. I think I have. Maybe for something, but I don't recall. Played 2nd edition. Played 3rd edition. Played 4th edition. And I've played 5th edition. RBG Grandma says they missed 3 and 4, starting to study 4 just so they can fiddle with it. I mean, 4 is very interesting. I feel like if you're interested in I would check out I think 4 is interesting. There's Lancer, right? I think if you want to look at someone's take on 4. Of course, there's MCDM, which I know they're not saying they're doing 4th edition, but I feel like they're doing kind of a 4E, or at least they're very influenced by 4E. And he has that campaign. If you want to, he did an actual play when they played 4E. If you want to see kind of I don't know how many people are playing Lancer or 4E in a way you can stream, but there was that that stream he did where he was playing 4th edition. So if you want to see 4th edition kind of played, then you can do it. I mean, it had stuff to recommend it. It just, and ultimately it fell short for me. but there were things that I enjoyed about it, and I think if you're in a group that really loves the combat minis and likes to work that, I think it's great. But I think it gets limited. I think that for me, I think that you feel like, oh my gosh, there's all this tactical stuff. But in the end, I don't know. I don't know if it was as tactically rich as you might think with all the things coming in. Maybe it's because everyone's kind of doing the same things. I know you can, it's got the interesting roles. You have the controller, you have the who's controlling the battlefield. But then, you end up with but I've got the thing that means that I don't have difficult terrain or, I can move over difficult terrain. Well, then that kind of ruins some of that stuff. And I know it's not just that. They can do stuff with visibility, whatever. And there's all kinds of, they're trying to do like a cat and mouse or rock, paper, scissors kind of deal. And okay, I'm the warlord. I'm this kind of leader type and I can help move people around and I'm this kind of guy. But I felt like too often, and this could be very group dependent, and that's the other thing, right? As with everything, it's so dependent on the group you have. Maybe my group just weren't into it. I know that when I was trying to be the warlord, trying to work with our rogue that was very much point to the beat of their own drum, it was not very successful. I try to set him up, he'd go dancing off somewhere else, and I would just be like, well, there goes this thing I have. And also the fact that I felt like you just run out of stuff eventually. And you end up in these, and that could also be my GM who liked to really give us every encounter was just a really tough, punishing encounter, which meant that they'd run long. We'd use up all our resources. And then you'd just be, basic attack, basic attack, basic attack, which I feel like in 4E is maybe even less fun than other editions just because you really feel like there's nothing outside the box to be done. It's just basic attack, basic attack, basic attack. Whereas I think in other games, and again, style of game also, we were kind of in it to victory or defeat. We weren't playing in that way like a war gamey where we felt like we could just kind of, let's just get out of this room and close the door. We were kind of playing, just the style of game was kind of planned encounter to the next planned encounter, next planned encounter. So we were kind of in it to the end, one way or another. RPG Grandma says they suspect ideas for 4E will reappear in the to-be-released new D&D. RPG Grandma, you don't have to wait. There are a lot of 4E ideas that are baked into 5th edition, frankly. Some things got changed around. Names were changed. They tweaked a little bit, but there is a good deal of 4th edition in the bones of 5E. They kind of re-round the clock on a few things. They changed some of the lingo, which people didn't like. I think a lot of the lingo struck people as being too video game oriented, a little bit too meta without being tied to the fiction. So you take something like, this is an encounter power, right? Because they had daily powers, encounter powers, whatever. So but then encounter it's not a fictional thing, right? No one says like, that was my encounter, right? Or when does an encounter end and when does one start? It's very much a meta thing. So they changed that lingo to once per short rest. Once per short rest or a short rest power is the same essentially as an encounter power. Same thing. Long rest powers, once per long rest powers, or how many times are your daily powers? Same thing. But they found a way to kind of tweak it a little bit, make it feel a little bit less video gamey, whether they meant to make it feel video game in the first place or not. And of course, there's arguments back and forth in that. There's a lot there. I mean, and it's more notable actually the thing from 4E that didn't make it into 5E, which is essentially the skill challenges. And I'm not a skill challenge person, but people love skill challenges. Or at least a lot of people do. And that was something that didn't make it. And the minion concept I thought was cool. I don't love it 100%, but I think in terms of with the way you're doing encounter balancing and stuff, to have minions, which minions are creatures, they can be of any particular hit die, CR level, whatever you want to use. And they can essentially, they hit pretty much the same as hard as a normal. So you had let's say a 10 hit die minion. It's 10 hit dice for all intents and purposes, except it's only got 1 hit point. But you got to hit it directly. You can't blow out a bunch of minions by them getting hit with a secondary effect. Now, a fireball will take them all out, but a lot of stuff would have secondary effects. Like the target takes 5 hit points of damage. Everyone around them takes 1. You couldn't do that by saying, if a boss was surrounded by 5 minions and I hit him with the thing and it does this little auxiliary damage to the NPCs, it'll just knock out all his minions like a bowling ball through pins. It doesn't work like that. You have to hit them kind of directly. But They were cool. So you could kind of bolster numbers, your monsters with these minions, but they would also have kind of they would. I feel like they did a good job giving them different. Maybe it's just cosmetics in the end, but just different looks. So you might have the goblin chieftain has a certain look to him, but then these other ones that were minions would have a different look. So once you kind of figured out who was who, you could kind of like, oh, those guys wearing the padded jerkins and whatever, those are minions, so take them out. I mean, and that I kind of like it and don't like it, because again, it's kind of video gaming where you have like different sprites. Oh, look at this, this one is clearly the guy that's really hard, and this one even looks just like him, but he's got a purple vest on. So purple vests are like the red shirts in Star Trek. We could take him out. But I thought there was something good there, and they kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater by not having that concept at all, especially given how hard it is for folks in 5e to balance things. I think minions would have been a good tool to have in the toolbox that they did not avail themselves of. But there's a lot of 4e in 5th edition for sure. But I'm sure they're going to keep tweaking, adding stuff in. But I don't want to get too caught up in because we did it. We did it, everybody. It only took us eight 1 hour plus streams, but we have read through Muster, a primer for war by Eero Tuovinen and illustrated by Sippi Millinen and published by Arkenstone Publishing. It is available for free digitally on drive-thru. Certainly worth another read. I'll definitely probably go back and read some different parts of it just at my leisure. Really great resource. I hope everybody's enjoyed the read. Let me know your thoughts. And this was a throwback. I mentioned this, I think, when I started this read-through, but this has been a throwback to the read-throughs of old that I used to do, where I literally would read through everything. I've kind of gotten away from that for my own sanity, and I think just for folks, there are probably some other books, other works, other content that work better this way. One of the reasons why I went back to the old style of reading everything is because I didn't feel like there was a way to really browse the talking points kind of thing, or to kind of summarize stuff. Just everything was very detailed. Everything was very rich with meaning and thought. And it didn't, when I just first opened it up and started looking at it, just didn't strike me as a piece that I could just glancing out on the page and pull out some key details. It's just, how do I look at this page and pull out what the important things are? I feel like I was going to miss too much. So it's like, I got to go back and just do it old school way, read it through. I don't mind doing it. It takes a lot of time, and I appreciate everybody who's hung out and participated or just watched all of these or listened to all of these different streams where I've gone through the book. I'm not averse to doing it. It's probably not going to be something I'll go back to for everything, but if there's something that, folks feel like, hey, this could really use a really thorough examination as opposed to what we usually do, let me know. Let me know what else is out there kind of this style that would really benefit from this kind of engagement, and we can try it. I can try to get a hold of it some way, somehow. Narrated by Todd. Yeah. I don't know anyone wants to hear me narrate a book, and certainly I'd have to do it without interjecting every few minutes. I don't think I'm going to be taking on any contracts to narrate works. That said, reach out to me if you'd like me to narrate your work in audio form. I'd be happy to try it, but yeah, something tells me that's not happening anytime soon. RPG Grandma says that, going back to minions, that says thinking having a range of critter stats, minions to buff to badass in the game is useful for the same monster. Yeah, it was. And then you could have, that was one nice thing, is you have goblins and you have all these different sorts of goblins that would fit different roles. You might have a goblin who's a leader type boss. You have a goblin who's a soldier type. You have a goblin who's a different type. And that was something nice. And I think that was helpful for folks, because it definitely, you could have just goblins for a location, and this way you could pull all kinds of different types of goblins together. Whereas, old school games, and now in 5e kind of fell back on that again, is you kind of had to intuit that yourself and do the outfitting, and kind of, if you want to give them different powers or different abilities or different whatever, you kind of had to do that yourself. Whereas 4e, if you go and look in their monster lists, you sort of got that out of the box, and that was nice. No Sorian says that pay me to narrate. Well, hey, No Sorian, if you're ever, I don't know if you're ever at your holiday parties for Christmas, someone says, geez, I need somebody to narrate a book, toss them my name. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to hold my breath, though, but I appreciate it. Anything else? Any last thoughts on Muster or anything else before I close the stream. I'm actually amazed that I got this stream off today at all, but I did, and I'll take it. I don't know what the rest of the week will hold with the kind of countdown to sort of Christmas being on. I will also be out of pocket for the week between Christmas and New Year's. I'll try to keep updating it. I think I'll probably be out. I think I'll finally have exhausted my PAX Unplugged videos by then, so I won't. I'm not sure if I'll have anything. I might just be just radio silent for a week and take a break. But we'll see how that works out. Maybe I'll get to record something. I'm not going to bring a bunch of stuff with me because it's just kind of family vacate sort of time. So that will be my focus then. We'll see what happens for the rest of the week. I don't know what I got coming out tomorrow. I got a bunch of stuff to do, but some of it I feel like I'm just going to save for the new year because scheduling, like I said, might be rough. Magnus, you're welcome to upload more game stuff. Absolutely. Go to the forums, upload some stuff, read some stuff. I gotta finish a bunch of stuff too. Never enough time. Always more things to do. But definitely, looking forward after the new year. I've got Scourge of the Northlands to do. I think where's the book? Is that? I think that's right here. Hold on a second. I've got it here. Scourge of the Northland will be coming after that. After the new year, some Broncolonia coming out after that. After the new year, I got to do. Also looking at the Walking Dead box set from Free League after the new year. I got Castle Zagig Volume 1 Yigsburg that I've been staring at in my pile. Maybe we'll do something with this after the new year. I got the Session Zero system that I've talked about. I want to kind of do a read of that after the new year. There's other stuff. Hyperborea. I'm pondering against the Dark Master. I've got Cities Without Number. Yeah, that'd probably put that on the list as well. Check that out. There's a lot, and there's always more. Also, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So there's this Hexplore 24 thing going on, or it will be planning to be going on, but I don't like the way it's. And you actually look in the. I think friend of the channel, Krister, on the. Let me see if I can pull it on the forums. Posted actually about it a little while back. It's where is it? So there's this thing called Hexplore 24. And we've been discussing it a little bit back and forth, but the Explore 24 seems to be more kind of, it has a focus, and this is not good or bad. I know a lot of folks love to do solo play, but I would prefer, I think, to do more. Oh, and and there's a message by Magnus here who I haven't even looked at yet. Somehow I missed it. For solo play, doing some kind of solo play thing, but I think I want to do more just wilderness stuff. Yeah, Ian, I did look into Dragonbane, and I think I looked at the box set. I believe I looked at the box set, and I did some solo playing, and that's the other thing. And I guess coming back to, so I'm definitely gonna. One of the things is I was starting to set up a solo play, and then just stuff happened. But that's another thing I want to do next year is start a solo play 1 day a week. We'll do a solo play. I want to get back. For a while I had that schedule where I was doing different things in different days. And I think I like that. You guys can let me know if having the more set schedule, what we're doing every day. I think I like that. And I'm definitely going to go back to a solo thing. I don't know if I'm going to use Dragonbane. Not that I didn't like it. I just want to try some different things. But that will also be coming up. So I got a lot of stuff coming. But yeah, I did do some solo playing. The Dragonbane had a really nice. I really like their solo play. If you enjoy Dragonbane and you want something that's kind of focused, but it gives you all the tools to do it. It's doing a specific thing, which is delving into these kind of subterranean spaces. But I really like that they just gave you this kind of focused solo thing you do out of the box. I also want to go back and try that kind of Aragorn mode for the One Ring. There's that too. Ian says, if I want to get into something weird and narrative with solo play, I could try something like 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. Not sure if it's too outside my wheelhouse. I'll check it out. I'm all for expanding my wheelhouse. I'd love to do more. There's that one time I was getting into unfortunately, I signed on for this. I mean, it was a play-by-post, so it wasn't like someone's going to get streamed or anything. But powered by the Apocalypse game. I think it was just Apocalypse World. I felt way over my head. Everyone was way more experienced with the system and everything than I was. I remember having a devil of a time just getting through the character generation just because I felt lost. But then the game fell apart before we got to play. So that'd be another thing. I definitely want to try to do more stuff and maybe try to do a couple of one-shots on stream. Probably wouldn't be during the day because that just doesn't work for most people. But hey, Jenks. Oh yeah, you're behind. Yeah, I haven't posted them. I haven't posted them to the OSR Discord just because I started the last few. I've been doing them kind of last minute, so I just end up not posting the social media stuff. And these are kind of. I mean, I know that a few people are interested in them, but they're also ones that like I'm on part 8 of something, so it kind of seems like it's a weird spot. Like if you watch the last ones, then hey, come and share. But I figured like I'm not going to be attracting much new viewers for part 8 of a series where I'm reading through a book because like why would I wouldn't want to jump into someone reading the 12th chapter of a book if I haven't been along for the ride for the last 11 chapters. Brian Smith, any plans for anything on stream solo or otherwise? Yes, I was just saying that, Brian Smith, but yeah, pretty much. I definitely want to do some. I'm going to do solo play, something once a week. I'm going to solo play, and then I want to do more kind of gaming, do some live stream games like I did for Caldwells Sanctuary. I'd love to do some things like one shots or testing some rules. I just got to find. I got to get figure out my schedule, figure out when other people have good schedules, and then just kind of do it. That's just kind of I just got to do it. I was pretty happy, all things considered, with how the Caldwells Sanctuary one went. So it made me feel a little bit more confident. So like, okay, this is something that's doable. So just need to figure out the parameters, figure out who's interested in it, and then we'll go from there. But yes, for sure, I want to do more. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna do some solo play, maybe one day a week streaming some kind of solo play stream. Hey, and it's got their Caldwells. Excellent. I got mine somewhere. Signed by the author himself. We signed each other's copies at PAX. That's not it right there, is it? No. It's somewhere around here. But yeah, looking forward to do a lot of stuff going on. All right, folks, I'm going to call this one quits. Maybe since I've finished muster. So muster was the one thing that I absolutely had to have done by the new year. Maybe we'll just do like a end of year, just kind of chat, just kind of keep it loose. One of these next couple days, like I said, I feel like I'm already luckier than lucky that I got 2 streams out back to back this week. But so far so good. So hopefully we can keep the string going along tomorrow. Not sure what I'll do. Maybe just keep it chill and easy. I got some other stuff going on. Let me know if you've got ideas, you've got things. I don't want to get into something. So I think give me your ideas, but I don't want to. I want to be able to do something that's kind of more or less. We can keep it to kind of within the stream. So I don't want to start and that's why I'm kind of what I was saying before about putting stuff off sort of for the new year, just because I don't want to do something where I might start something and then have to put it on ice for like a week and a half. If I stream tomorrow, but then I can't stream until after New Year's, essentially, just because work and whatnot, then I don't want to leave something hanging like that. I don't want any hanging chads coming out of the new year. So, or going into the new year. So if you got something we can kind of a topic or something we can cover, happy to do it, happy to talk about whatever, and just kind of slide into the holidays, or at least the last holiday or second to last. Yeah, not the last holiday. New Year's would be the last holiday. So let's slide into the rest of the holiday season nice and easy. Let's do that. All right, folks. Oh, Brian Smith says, should we have a slew of Dungeon 23 projects wrapping up around the web? I mean, I think if people are going all the way to the new year, you're not going to see them until probably spring 2024, because after they're all done, that's just the rough drafts, right? People in those, assuming they're doing them in those hand notebooks, then they got to take them all out of those notebooks and digitize them and do whatever. So I don't imagine you're going to see products for a while. Though other folks are doing it digitally, I'm sure those some will come out right away. I would definitely love to see what comes out. I'm super curious about it, but we will see. Yeah, Dungeon 24. I like Explore 24 as a name, but I don't want to do it as solo. I just want to do it as creating wilderness stuff. So that might be another thing that next year, starting after the first, we'll do some one day a week and maybe we'll do a number of hexes during a week. So we'll end up with 300. If we do it every week, we'll end up with a bunch, but not commit to it every day unless I do them as shorts or some other way where I can just take snapshots really quickly. I don't know. We'll see. Might need some ideas. Magnus, should you do Dungeon 24? I don't know. Does it feel like it's something you want, Magnus? I kind of feel like the Gygax challenge is something that is better just to, I guess it depends where you are in your game, right? If you really want a mega dungeon or you want to do a bunch of dungeons, I think something like Dungeon 24 is awesome. If you're looking for, man, I'd really like kind of a well-rounded sort of setting or micro setting, mini setting area, campaign area, I would say take on the Gygax challenge maybe to start, and then you can always morph into Dungeon Dungeon 23 type thing afterwards. Hey, Trash Boat, you're catching me at the end, Trash Boat, but I appreciate you hopping in. I got a few more minutes. What else we got? Magnus says, I'll need a mega-ish dungeon soon. Yeah, so then do Dungeon 24. Even if you only want to do it for a month or so, however many weeks, there's a lot of good procedural stuff out there, tools and things for doing kind of that approach, even if you don't end up wanting to do it for here. In fact, I put together a Dungeon 23 helper myself, which you can find on itch. I'll probably have to go through and update it for adding some stuff for Hexplorer 24, maybe. More of a several hex location, Magnus says, and well, I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of tools to vary stuff with, but that was one thing that Dungeon 23, I think, pushed people to do, including myself, was even if we weren't taking on the challenge, trying to make things to help other people with such things. I might try to use Knave. Yeah, I haven't seen Knave second edition. That's something I'm going to try to get. I hit the wrong. I meant to highlight Magnus's, and I got Dave's instead. The wood shop, Dave. I wish I had a wood shop. Bridget Grandma says they're going to take Jim Ward's advice, start out in the center of a blank page and create out. I mean, it's always good advice. I mean, I think I've given similar advice. A lot of people have that kind of radial prep. I think it works pretty well. And that way, I kind of like the idea of knowing something about. That's my one issue with the 3 hex thing, like Chicago is because I always feel like I need to have that around. Like if I'm in that hex and I go to a high point and look around, what do I see? It can't just be blank. So I feel like having like wherever I am and having the hexes around it configured, and then at least in sketched, and if I move to the next hex, figure out the ones around them, that makes sure that I'm always looking at landscape and I'm not running off the ends of the holodeck, so to speak. Ian said that their Dungeon 23 ended up being RPG 23, and it's very much incomplete. I don't think you're going to be alone there. I think even the people who did every day for the whole trip are going to find that it was incomplete. So I think that's okay. I think the ideal goal, Ian, as long as you get something useful out of it, either in terms of prep or actual stuff or whatever, then it's worthwhile, right? And that was the thing I think that was, I don't want to say people struggled with, but it was one of those things that there was a lot of about, I think, as people got going, and it was kind of like, hey, here's the goal of it, right? It's just, we just want you to get something done. Like the idea is just to encourage everybody with a tool, with something to kind of get things done every day, which is really good. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what it is. And whether that thing ends up being complete or incomplete, it doesn't matter as long as it fulfilled some other thing. Ian says it might be fun to do some kind of crash landing type game where you something like a hex flower generate hexes at the table. A lot of people like that hex flower. I mean, I don't have anything wrong with the hex flower as a thing. I feel like I know there's that particular creator that just hex flowers everything. I do find sometimes that it doesn't always work as great, but they're kind of jamming into the hex flower mechanic. I don't mean, and for me, it doesn't matter. Like the hex flower mechanic, it's just a way of doing it. It's like, do I want to roll dice? Do I want to flip cards? Like, yeah, there's a few things that flipping cards, interesting things that dice itself don't do. But you could essentially have tables with a hex flower, and in some ways, the hex flower becomes limited because you're stuck in that hex flower shape. And so sometimes things that maybe don't naturally work in that number of options become you just kind of end up jamming it in there. I think the other thing that doing your hexes like that suffers from, and I know that I remember someone was telling me about this or having the same issue, is that things like water, things traveling, like things that extend over multiple hexes, it's tough to do with those things because they don't take into account, right? If you run into a river in hex A and you roll for hex B and there's no river, like, well, what happened to that river? Or how do I get water? Those kind of things. How do I get water move or other structures that are you want to exist from hex to hex that maybe aren't the actual landscape itself, because you can weight in some ways the terrain, but some of the other features, it's really hard. And so I think sometimes that what are we really trying to do by doing it all at the table? Like, yeah, there's just kind of, I guess, that fun element of, hey, look, we don't know. But if I'm the referee, then why don't I want to know? Like, I'm okay knowing all the hexes around. And when we have tools like Worldographer, or we just looked at, that other hex tool just the other day, that will give you, they'll give you all the tools that you need and give you all that stuff. Like, use them. I get it for solo play, where I was like, I don't want to know. I really don't want to know because I'm trying to be a player, and I don't want to see the next. I get that, and I think it may be cool if you could use one of those generators and have it be a tool where you could literally fog of war yourself. That would be kind of cool. But ultimately, I don't know that we've found a way. I don't know that anyone's come up with a kind of like do it at the table tool that works for hexes when you kind of put everything into account, because you can get weird terrains that going back and forth, water sources, rivers that don't go anywhere, or no rivers at all, or like they just be some weirdness can happen. And I wonder sometimes if, because we're so focused on this goal of generating at the table, that we're not asking ourselves like, but why? Like I said, if I'm refereeing it, I'm okay knowing. If I'm trying to play solo, I get it. That's kind of a special case. And then you got to try to figure out how much you want to pre-know about the world. But even then, if I'm just generating terrain, I don't feel like that's a huge deal. And I can just generate small bits ahead that have all the features that I want, and then just play in there. But that's me, right? Obviously, we got to, whatever we want for each other. What do we want for ourselves, I guess? Magnus says, remember when Dungeon 23 first talked about on this channel, changed jobs, had another kid since? Well, it couldn't have been much more than a year. So a lot's happened in the year. I feel you, Magnus. I appreciate it. Magnus says, listening to the stream catalogs really helped get through those graveyard shifts. Oh, well, I'm glad. I'm glad. I can say this. There's a lot of content out there. If you go back to just the streams, you've got, I think at this point, enough hours to fill a year at least of listening, which is kind of crazy to think about. RBG Grandma says it's okay to randomize and purposely put things on a map together. Yes, right. I think RBG Grandma, to your point, is I think a lot of people, they just want to use a tool or a specific method. And then the concept of it like they just want, no, I just want to do this method. Like, I just want to use hex flowers. It's like, hey, great. But, tools have good things and bad things and limitations and whatever. And sometimes it's okay to say, I get it. I love hex flowers, but this thing, I need to bolster the hex flowers with something else, or I need to do water a different way because doing it this way doesn't work. Or even just in terms of terrain, like how are you going to have water when your elevations are all over the place because you're going mountain to desert to mountain to whatever? It's like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, it's okay to say, well, I got to give it a little bit of thing, or I have to do whatever. Like, it'll be okay. It will be okay. Ryan Smith says they're basically in the middle ground of world building and solo playing to uncover the areas that left blank. Just want to use their magic 8-ball. Get off my lawn. My daughter actually put a magic 8-ball on her Christmas list. I may have mentioned this before, but that is awesome to me. Whew. All right. Well, good. I'm glad. A nice post-reading chat, folks. We'll do more of this tomorrow. Let's do just like a nice, easy one. I mean, knock on wood, I'll get the stream tomorrow, but presumably I'll put. Let's figure out some stuff. Let's figure out what we're gonna do with our next year. That's a good way, kind of like a look ahead episode of the stream. Hopefully tomorrow. Knock on wood. Hey, Jay Scott. Yep, a magic 8-ball. My daughter wants one for reasons I don't understand. I don't even know where she really saw one, but she wants one, and I think she's gonna get one. I think Santa's elves have told me she's probably gonna get one, and she doesn't listen to the stream, so I can't really spoil it for her. She's gonna get one. Sorian says, "Oh, the magic 8-ball, half brother of the D100 die." Yeah, I remember having one of those D100 dice, and I didn't love it. As cool as I thought it was, like, yeah, this die goes to 100. I felt a little bit like that Spinal Tap. Our dials go to 11 kind of thing, and I don't know. There's a big and each faces of the dice were so tiny. I don't know. It was cool. It was fun to have it just as sort of a thing, but didn't end up using it too much. All right, folks. Hopefully we'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll do some looking forward and just some nice chill chat. Knock on wood. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.